We start with heightened tensions over the Sea of Japan, where the US and Japan carried out a powerful show of force. According to Tokyo, nuclear-capable American bombers flew with Japanese fighter jets after China and Russia conducted military exercises close to Japan and South Korea. Japan's defense ministry said that 2 US B-52 bombers flew with 3 Japanese F-35 stealth fighters and 3 Japanese F-15 fighter jets on Wednesday. The move was to, quote, stop any attempt to alter the regional status quo by force, according to Tokyo. Well, this was the first US show of military presence since China began exercises in the area last week. The joint US-Japan flight came a day after China and Russia held large coordinated drills in the region. Their exercises included bomber flights and naval activity near Japan and South Korea. 2 Russian Tu-95 nuclear-capable bombers flew from the Sea of Japan towards the East China Sea to link up with 2 Chinese H-6 bombers. Japan's defense ministry said the 4 bombers then carried out a long-distance joint flight into the Pacific. The patrol lasted nearly 8 hours.
Through diplomatic channels, the government has conveyed to both China and Russia-Japan's serious security concerns regarding the continued joint activities by Chinese and Russian military forces around our nation, including this recent joint flight.
4 Chinese J-16 fighter jets joined the bomber formation as it passed between Japan's Okinawa and Miyako Islands. The route lies in international waters. According to Japan, Tokyo scrambled its own fighter jets to monitor the Chinese and Russian aircraft. Japan called these repeated joint bomber flights a grave concern for national security. A government spokesperson said the missions show an expansion and intensification of Chinese and Russian military activity around Japan.
The repeated joint bomber flights by both countries signify an expansion and intensification of activities around our nation, and we cannot but view them as a show of force against Japan. We consider this a matter of grave concern for our national security.
Well, these tensions follow an earlier incident in which Japanese aircraft were reportedly targeted by Chinese fighter jet radar. Japan said the radar lock happened twice on Saturday off its southern Okinawa Islands, accusing Beijing of harassment. Well, locking a radar is considered a hostile action because it can signal a possible attack. Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi said Japan would respond calmly and resolutely and increase air and maritime surveillance. Meanwhile, Beijing strongly denied these claims, accusing Japan of harassing its aircraft during routine exercises. Well, both China and Japan are locked in a spat, which began with sharp diplomatic language but has spilled over into projecting military might. And with US-Japan bomber flights on one side and expanding China-Russia cooperation on the other, military activity around Japan continues to intensify. Tokyo says it's watching every move closely as regional tensions rise. Well, for more on this now, we're joined by David Dunn, a defense and security expert and professor of international politics at the University of Birmingham. He joins us live now from Birmingham. Welcome to Spotlight. So to what extent then does this signal a rapidly changing security landscape in East Asia?
Well, I think what it shows is a growing confidence on the part of the Chinese that they can sail this close to Taiwan and to Japan without there being any consequences. The interesting aspect is that they're joined by the Russians, again showing confidence in Moscow in dealing with what they regard as enemies of Moscow, and indeed the confidence that they can act without there being any reaction from Washington. What you have in the wider picture is that the Americans appeasing the Russians when it comes to Ukraine and the efforts by the Russians to change international frontiers by the use of force, and the Americans more or less saying that that's okay and trying to force Ukrainians to give away more territory. And that sends a signal to those that actually want to change the maps elsewhere, as the Chinese do in this part of the world around Taiwan and indeed with regard to Taiwan and around Japan. So all things are connected, and that's what we're seeing here.
And with those connections then, I mean, the question that people might pose is, why is this happening now? What's actually driving these actions forward?
Well, as your report indicated, it's partly the fact that the Japanese said that they actually may come to the defense of Taiwan if the Chinese try to take it by force under certain circumstances, given how materially linked to their security, that the future of Taiwan and the shipping lanes around Taiwan are. And I say, that bigger picture of questions over American commitment to Japan and to Taiwan, or even to standing up to aggression and the attempts to change frontiers by the use of illegal force more generally. So these things are linked to the wider picture, and that wider picture is one that's set partly by Trump and his change away from traditional American foreign policy and reassurance to allies.
So given what you say then, what needs to happen to reduce tensions? Is there any mechanism that might help to scale things down?
Well, I mean, the effort on the American force commander in Japan to actually have the American aircraft accompany Japanese aircraft is for trying to send that signal of resolve that America stands square with Japan in defense of its territory and of its interests. So there is an attempt to actually use diplomatic signaling through the deployment of military force. But that's only, of course, credible if the noises coming from Washington also match that. And what we have seen is an absence of that. So in a sense, it's partly American weakness, Trump's weakness, that actually is encouraging China and Russia to behave like this. And the more weakness we see from Washington, the more provocations we'll see from Moscow and Beijing. And therefore, it's unlikely to resolve these issues more broadly, because these are unrecognizable issues. The future of Taiwan is a zero-sum game. You can't have an independent Taiwan and a Taiwan that's controlled by Beijing, and therefore the only way that you can stop that status quo being changed is by demonstrating a willingness to be robust in response to that, and that's something we're not seeing from Washington.
David Dunn, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Spotlight.
Always a pleasure.
I was born into revolution. I inherited power like a crown. What I delivered was isolation. I built a personality cult that touched every home. Millions suffered hunger under my rule, but no one dared to speak. I ruled from palaces. My people queued for rice. I called myself the dear leader. History calls me something else, the dictator. Who am I?